there's a way to make an entrance.
This is my destiny.
It was now a conspiracy of witches.
Download Veely today.
The events in this program are inspired by a true story. Names, dates, and events have been changed. Viewer discretion is advised.
Nope.
On this episode of Bizarre Murders,
Hi.
when a lonely heart thinks she's found the man of her dreams, she launches into a whirlwind romance.
I don't like him and I don't trust him.
But will he make her heart skip
Oh my god, yes!
or just stop beating?
Send an ambulance right away. My wife's unconscious.
Joan, the manager of a prestigious local architecture firm, has everything she ever wanted when it comes to her career.
Nope. No.
But after 2 failed marriages, this 45-year-old finds herself back in the dating pool, and the water is cold.
Too into himself.
When you're a woman over 40, unfortunately, most of your dating options are less Fabio and more Flabio. This leaves many successful women with their beds empty and their bank accounts full. Targets for attractive young liars, scammers, or worse. It just isn't fair.
Just when Joan's given up on finding love again, the man of her dreams walks in to her office.
Hi,
Hi,
I'm Clay.
Joan. Come in.
Clay, a chiseled-jawed architect who's just turned 32, is starting his first day at Joan's firm.
So, how are you settling in?
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Good.
Everyone's been really welcoming and, figuring my way around.
Good.
Yeah.
From the moment their eyes meet, there are sparks.
Stop by anytime. My door is always open to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
To Joan, Clay seems like the man she's been searching for her entire life. Not only is he handsome, but he's charming, funny, and has a great job.
You might want to tell your wife that you're going to be working long hours.
I'm single.
Oh. Okay, so great.
But with 13 years age difference between them, Joan's certain Clay would never be attracted to her.
But Joan's wrong. Clay's interested in her, very interested. The question is it for the right reasons?
When Clay makes his desires known, Joan is more than receptive. Before long, the couple is inseparable.
This is the first time in her life that Joan feels really loved in every possible way. In a few short months, she's gone from giving up on relationships to living the life of a romance novel heroine, and she's eating it up.
So he's from the Midwest. And where was he before he was at your firm?
I'm not sure. We just haven't made that far in the conversations. But I can tell he's really, really, really good guy.
And how can you tell?
Not everyone is happy
Just he's
about
so
the relationship,
generous
though,
and he's very
including Joan's
attentive
best
to me.
friend, Lena.
Seems like this is moving way too fast. Why don't you just slow down, make sure that it's really right this time?
It's fine.
You've heard people talk about beer goggles, but I've seen plenty of love goggles. Smart people, but they're so wrapped up in their romantic fantasies that they ignore the basic lessons we were taught as kids, like don't trust people until you've gotten to know them. How does that Elvis song go? Only fools rush in.
That was just a truly wonderful night.
Let me get a look at you again. You really are the most beautiful woman I've ever laid my eyes on.
I bet you say that to all the...
Despite Lena's reservations, Joan is determined to live her real-life romance novel. And in 3 months, she moves on to the next chapter.
Will you marry me?
Of course, yes.
2 months later, the couple is married in a small ceremony attended by their closest friends. But a dark cloud appears over Joan's sunny new life when she notices money disappearing from her bank account There's only two people who have access to that account, her and her brand new husband, Clay.
What is this? These are my accounts.
Joan, I can explain this.
Yeah, you better.
Clay confesses to taking the money,
I'm paying child support.
What?
but says he only did it to support his
I was
two
gonna tell
children
you about this.
from
It's
his
just-
two
it's never been the
previous
right
marriages.
time. I've made some bad decisions in my past, but that's what it is. It's the past. Joan, I love you. You're the one I want to be with.
Joan forgives Clay, and he swears to never betray her trust again.
I've lost count of how many times at the FBI we'd see kind, generous, beautiful women desperate for attention being swept away by boy toys who take them for everything they've got. I mean, if it's too good to be true, it is. In my experience, no matter how much these guys swear you can trust them, the situation almost always ends in tears. If you're lucky.
You are his wife now. Don't you think your entire relationship being based on a lie is a little bit of a problem? I don't like him, and I don't trust him, and I don't know what you don't get about that.
Not everyone is as
You've been
forgiving
through
as
some
Joan.
stuff. You can't trust the guy. He lied to you.
When Lena hears what
You are
Clay's been up
acting
to,
like a fool.
she seizes on it as proof he's a bad guy.
You know what? You don't know him like I know him.
Life soon returns to normal. Until... Almost a year to the day of her wedding, Joan is struck with a sudden mysterious illness that leaves her throwing up with bloody diarrhea and gasping for breath. By the time Clay races her to the hospital, her organs are already failing.
How are you, Joan? You feeling okay?
Clay stays by his wife's side as puzzled doctors run a battery of tests trying to determine what's happened to the normally vibrant Joan.
Do you think you could just give us a few minutes?
Joan's close confidant, Lena, requests a moment alone with her friend.
I just need to see my friend alone for a few minutes. I'm sure you can understand that.
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Clay is hesitant,
It'll be fine.
but finally agrees, telling Joan he'll be right outside.
Why is Clay acting so strange? What is going on with him?
Within minutes, Clay gets antsy and decides it's time to resume his place at his wife's side.
One of the signs that Mr. Wonderful might be a problem is that he needs total control over you.
I think Joan needs some rest now, so you should go.
Guys like Clay rely on having absolute influence over the woman they're latched onto. If you're an outsider who isn't buying into his charm and worshiping at the altar of his ego, then you're gone.
With Lena ousted, Clay resumes his vigil at his wife's bedside.
Joan?
Until minutes later, her vital signs crash.
Help! Somebody! Help my wife! Joan may have wanted to live a romance novel, but now her story's taking an unexpected twist. Is she breathing? What's going on? Help!
Doctors inform Clay that Joan has suffered a stroke.
Joan! Joan, come on. Help her! Please, Joan!
Her organs are already failing.
Tell me what's going on!
They warn him to prepare for the worst. But by a medical miracle, they eventually manage to stabilize his wife. When hospital staff double-check Joan's IV, they find the bank of fluids that was previously clear is now cloudy. That can only mean one thing. Someone's tampered with it.
To tamper with an IV bag at a hospital, that's ballsy. You have to undo the line, use a syringe to tamper with the contents, then put everything back in place, all in a couple minutes. That's almost impossible for somebody without medical experience.
Doctors run another battery of tests on Joan. When the results come back, they show something much more serious than IV tampering. She's been poisoned with lidocaine, an everyday medication that in high doses can become deadly.
Lidocaine is best known as a key ingredient in hemorrhoid cream, so it can get rid of a pain in the ass. I wonder who sees Joan as a pain in the ass.
Having discovered that Joan's been poisoned on their watch, doctors must treat this situation as an attempted murder.
Nice to meet you. I'm Detective Weber.
Most of the time when there's an attempt on a woman's life, you'll find that her spouse is behind it. So in a situation like this, we're looking straight at, you guessed it, Mr. Wonderful, Clay. And unlike Joan, we're not focused on his pecs.
But Clay's not the only one who has access to Joan.
You've got doctors, nurses, orderlies, candy stripers. Even Lena has to be considered a suspect as she was alone with Joan. You've heard everybody's a suspect, but it's true. Police work is based on thorough investigations, not on hunches and assumptions. We leave those to psychics and armchair detectives. And let me tell you, our solve rate is much, much higher than theirs.
I'm wondering if either of you have seen anybody other than hospital staff in this room.
No.
No one.
With no hard evidence to narrow the pool of suspects, and with Joan saying she wants to forget the whole incident, Detective Hannah Weber is forced to drop her investigation before it's even begun.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
When Joan is eventually released from the hospital, Clay attends to her every need. And once Joan's back at work,
Hey, babe.
Clay, ever the doting husband, only becomes more protective.
Oh yeah, Clay's right in there protecting Joan from her friends, her coworkers, the police, anyone who could challenge her rose-colored view of him. Thank God for Clay.
Just when Joan is finally getting back to her old routine, she lands in another hospital with the same old symptoms: vomiting, bloody diarrhea, and difficulty breathing. Once again, Clay runs to her side. Once again, her IV turns cloudy. And once again, doctors discover that she has been poisoned with lidocaine.
Well, that narrows the suspect pool because one hospital could have a homicidal staff member going around poisoning patients. I mean, it happens, but it's rare. Two hospitals with would-be killers trying to murder the same patient with the same poison? That only happens in movies, the really bad ones.
When hospital staff get in touch with Detective Weber, she knows what she has to do.
I'm going to need you to step out of the room.
Detective Weber bans everyone but essential staff from the room.
You too, ma'am.
And posts officers to stand guard over Joan. Detective
Joan?
Weber interviews Joan alone so she can speak freely.
How are you feeling?
But Joan refuses to cooperate with the investigation.
Do you know if your husband has been in this room the entire time?
My husband has nothing to do with this.
So Joan is clearly still drinking Clay's Kool-Aid. The investigators would be better off talking to Lena. She's not buying what Clay is selling.
With the investigation once again stalled, Lena decides it's time to take matters into her own hands. Late one night, she sneaks into Clay's office. Lena discovers a series of life insurance policies, all taken out on Joan, with her husband Clay as the sole beneficiary.
Come on, is anybody really surprised by this? I didn't think so.
Certain she's found the proof she needs to expose Clay, Lena again confronts Joan, life insurance policies in hand. Joan is hesitant, but agrees to speak with Clay about the policies that night.
Clay? Can you come here a minute?
What is it?
What are these?
They're insurance policies.
When
I
Joan
know
questions
that.
her husband
Why?
about the policies, he claims he
Joan,
has to
you've been
protect
sick.
himself and his children
Three
in case anything ever happens to her.
Protect them from what? His cash cow drying up? This guy is a real piece of work.
Honey, you haven't been well. What if something happened? I mean, this is what couples do. You've been talking to Lena, haven't you?
The real
I
problem,
don't
Clay
think you should
says,
see her
is
anymore.
Lena snooping through his office.
She's got it in for me.
She doesn't have it in for you.
Yes, she does.
No, she doesn't.
I've sensed it from day one. She's coming between us.
You know, the only thing creepier than trying to control who your wife spends time with
I don't think you should see her anymore.
is doing that same thing while your hands are around her neck.
We talked about it, and he explained everything to me.
The next day, when Lena asks how Clay reacted to the life insurance policies, Joan turns the situation around.
You know what? I've had enough.
Yeah, me too.
I've had enough of you. Get out. I'm over this. Get out.
By this point, it's obvious to everyone, except Joan, that Clay has it out for her. But she's determined to follow her heart, even if it kills her.
Joan? 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 Joan, are you all right? Joan? Joan? Send an ambulance right away. My wife's unconscious. Joan? Joan? Joan, stay with me.
Joan arrives at the hospital not breathing and with no pulse. Despite their best efforts, doctors are unable to pull off yet another miracle. Within minutes of her arrival, Joan is pronounced dead.
When Joan's fantasy romance takes a deadly turn, Detective Weber's determined to smoke out the killer.
Hi, yeah, it's Detective Weber.
She immediately orders an autopsy. When the results come in, they reveal Joan's cause of death as nicotine poisoning.
Okay, something's not right here. Something's bizarre. You've got a non-smoker who's turned up dead from nicotine poison. In all my years with the FBI, I've never seen anything like it.
The investigation gets more bizarre when the coroner finds an unexplained mark behind her ear.
So, Clay.
Detective Weber interviews prime suspect Clay.
She'd mentioned earlier that day that she had some chest pains, but didn't
But he
seem to be
denies
anything
having
too
anything to
serious.
do with Joan's death.
I called 911 and, well, you know the rest.
He claims the couple had simply enjoyed
We
a
were both
quiet
in bed.
evening at home, then headed to bed together.
Did Joan have any enemies who may have wanted to kill her?
He suggests that Weber speak with Lena, the only person Joan fought with recently.
I heard you had a fight with Joan about Clay.
We had several fights.
Detective Weber interviews Joan's friend,
He was awful to her. He bled her dry financially.
only to have her point the finger back at Clay as the one with the real motive to kill Joan. Unable to establish when Joan was poisoned, there's nothing more Detective Weber can do. And once again, the case goes cold.
Lena's devastated by Joan's death. Maybe not surprised, but she's devastated. Clay? Not so much. In a matter of weeks, he sells her house and skips town.
Clay moves to Los Angeles, California, where he gets a job as a graphic designer, remarries, and has a child. But one person refuses to move on, Detective Weber.
Here's my investigative rule. You can have a hunch, but you have to let it die a natural death if evidence changes it. In this case, the only person who had real access to Joan the night of the murder was her husband, Clay. There's been an incredible advance in technology in the last decade or so, and maybe there was enough to get the evidence to make this theory stick.
Detective Weber sends out the evidence to one of the nation's leading nicotine experts. A key piece of new evidence is uncovered using methods that weren't available 7 years earlier.
The issue with this case has always been that law enforcement couldn't or didn't establish a timeline for the poisoning. Well, we finally got one, and that's all they need to nail that guy.
Have a seat.
Thanks. Thanks for seeing me again.
No problem.
I'm here because we got the toxicology report back on your wife's death, and I have a couple questions based on the results.
Toxicology report.
Clay still claims that he and Joan spent the evening together, then went to bed. When Detective Weber asks whether anyone else came by the house that night, Clay confirms that there was more than a 6-hour period where the couple was alone before Joan died.
Bam! Clay may not know it, but he just gave himself up. You see, the nicotine expert gave a timeline. It says the poison was administered 30 minutes before Joan's death, and Clay's just said he was the only one with her at that time. See ya, Clay.
Clay's statement and the medical expert's timeline can only mean one thing. After Joan went to bed that fateful night, her husband stayed up and prepared a lethal concoction by meticulously emptying out an entire pack of cigarettes and emulsifying the dried tobacco into a liquid substance.
As for how he administered it, well, do you remember that unexplained mark behind Joan's ear? When Joan was at her most vulnerable, her supposed dream man gave her a deadly shot of nicotine and then climbed into bed and waited for her to die. That amount of nicotine doesn't sound like a lot, but for a non-smoker like Joan, one pack would do the trick.
To ensure his plan worked this time, Clay waited until Joan was too far gone to be saved before calling 911 and performing CPR.
He thought acting like the perfect husband would throw police off his trail, but we know that trick.
Send an ambulance right away.
Just because someone helps the victim doesn't mean we stop looking at them. I mean, if anything, we look harder since they all had the access needed to kill. Why do they keep thinking they're smarter than the police?
When investigators looked into Clay's past, they discovered he didn't just lie about murdering his wife, but about everything, including his degree in architecture.
Will you marry me?
Of course, yes.
The whole dream relationship had been fake too. Clay hadn't fallen for Joan, just her bank account. When her cash started to dry up, Clay took his plan to the next level.
As soon as Joan was worth more to Clay dead than alive, he rewrote her story, going from a sexy romance to a murder mystery.
After twice failing to kill Joan with lidocaine, Clay changed the drug of his choice to nicotine and discovered that when it came to killing Joan, third time's the charm. Certain he got off scot-free, Clay cashed in Joan's life insurance, quit his job, and left town, rich and ready to start over. As for Lena, she was right about everything to do with Clay and had only been trying to save her friend from the clutches of a dangerous charlatan.
Here's a strange thing about human nature that you see specifically in this case. Despite continued overwhelming evidence that Clay was using and abusing her, Joan just couldn't or wouldn't see it. She wanted so badly to be a romance novel heroine that she bought into the wrong man. You know what he bought? He bought an insurance policy on her life.